All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Maritime Mysteries of the Flathead with Kyron Zimmerman and Jeremy Weber from the Big Fork Eagle. How you doing, Kyron?
I'm doing great this morning. How about yourself today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Nice.
All right. So hopefully over the next couple weeks, months, years, however long this project goes, we can let people know what's going on and what we're finding underneath the waves in Flathead Lake and beyond. Can you tell me a little bit about this project and how it came to be? What do you guys do exactly?
Right on. So, I grew up here in the Flathead and, recreating on Flathead Lake every summer. And, I was ice fishing in the winter. You always see what's above the water, beautiful mountain vistas and, everything that's above the water. But I have a bit of a different interest. When I'm out there, I'm always trying to explore what's more. And surprisingly, there's actually tons of history that's underneath the waters of Flathead Lake that hasn't been surveyed very effectively. So at a pretty young age, I got certified in scuba diving, and exploring the underwater world has always been a pretty major passion of mine since then. Getting certified here in the Flathead, you really don't have much other opportunities to go diving. And, it's like you can go over to the Great Lakes or, go out to the Caribbean or the ocean or anything. So we have this amazing resource right here in the Flathead Valley, which is Flathead Lake, the Flathead River system, and neighboring watersheds, where there is a lot of history just locked up underneath the water. So diving down and revealing or showing or documenting what is there. It's just a part of our history that has been overlooked for so long. Up until recently, we haven't had the technology that allows us to dive to the bottom of Flathead Lake. Now I'm running advanced sonar imaging and ROVs, and of course, diving technology has advanced so much where we can actually go down and effectively document these sites. So I guess with my history in diving, kind of what led up to this project is, with my background in diving and my passion for, science communications, educational resource development, I really kind of gravitated towards photography and videography, documenting for scientific purposes, put those two passions together, like, hey, let's go ahead and document and see what's underneath Flathead Lake.
I know you did some projects outside of the U.S. and around the area, but how did you end up back on Flathead Lake?
Ooh, that's a good question. So back in 2011, I started traveling for conservation work first. I went down to New Zealand, did a bunch of work with New Zealand Fish and Game, and had a really amazing opportunity to dive and document fisheries management so that they can develop a better comprehensive database for their freshwater fisheries, documenting how agriculture was impacting their rivers and lake systems. So to go along with the numerical data, all the scientific sensors that they were deploying and collecting environmental information on, I was employed to dive and document what those scientific numbers represented. And it was an amazing, amazing process. They dropped me off in these high tributaries above the irrigation zone. I would drift down, just like floating, snorkeling in these rivers, taking pictures of everything that I saw. Trout, health of the trout, birds, fish, anything that was interacting in those river systems. And of course, clarity of the water, how much algal growth was developing. And over the course of a couple of days, I would drift into like the agricultural areas. And then you can see immediately once it was almost like a pretty well-defined line when farmers or the river was being affected by agriculture. The health and conditions of trout and bird species really started to degrade. Once irrigation really picked up kind of in their summer months, like the whole river stretch would essentially dry up below these dams, these irrigation dams. And then just documenting the process of these fish getting isolated from the main tributary, the water just disappearing, and these trout essentially like suffocating, right? It was a really impactful video survey. When I came back to the United States, I was eager to just continue those skills and continue to develop my passion for underwater film work. And looking out over Flathead Lake, that's just a big open opportunity, it was calling to me. So,
absolutely. So what is it exactly that this project is looking for underneath those waves?
So It's not common knowledge, but before there were roads built around Flathead Lake, this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, steamboat traffic was the only way, material could be easily transported from Polson up to Demarsville, up to the old township of Holt and Kalispell and Columbia Falls. Like, the lake was our primary highway at the time. And there was an immense number of commercial vessels, private vessels, that operated on Flathead Lake from the late 1800s all the way to the 1920s and 30s, and a lot of those boats did meet some demise or another. A lot of wreckages at the bottom of Flathead Lake, a lot of materials at the bottom of Flathead Lake, and yeah, we're just going to see what is actually down there to develop a more comprehensive survey or a comprehensive analysis of what is at the bottom of that watershed. Flathead Lake, as you know, it's a very popular recreational site. As more people come out to recreate on Flathead Lake, those archaeological sites could be at risk of being destroyed or altered. And one of the things that I feel is really significant is we could potentially lose this archaeological resource. We can lose this part of our history and not really know that it's there to begin with. Another really big concern is if zebra mussels or quagga mussels or other aquatic invasive species can get introduced. The mussels especially could significantly alter wrecks underneath the water. Indigenous sites underneath the water as well that have been either deposited there at the time of their making or, with Kerr Dam being put in, these sites have been flooded. So having an archaeological record documenting where, what, and how these sites are presently, it's the best way to preserve them for future generations.
So do we know of any sites that have already disappeared?
Well, again, this is kind of a new survey, right?
Right.
A big part of this first year is to document what's there. We do know of a couple of sites that we've dove on back in 2016. Diving on them recently shows that they have been altered since we first documented and dove on them. The Kiyomi has had some materials removed from it. Every big flood event, or a river washing could potentially deteriorate structure that could be out in the Flathead River system. Wrecks that are up in like the Middle Fork and the Flathead River system, there's a pretty good chance that that's getting deteriorated, kind of on an annual basis. You have major flooding events, you have sedimentation, so wrecks and structures are getting buried by sediment as it comes into the river and lake system. There is a site up in Dickey Lake. Again, it hasn't been surveyed very effectively, but it's an old logging camp.
Okay.
Back in the 20s and 30s, they would pull logs onto the ice, and that's where they would have their timber sales. And actually, it's quite interesting because, a lot of that material has either fallen through the ice or sunk. And, people are going out there and removing, here's a cool pickaxe, or, here's a cool saw. And they're not really realizing the historical significance of that site. Right. Anything that's been, lost, quote unquote, lost or abandoned for 50 years or more, that's it gets integrated into the Antiquities Act. So, newspaper tin from 50 years ago, it was litter back then, but now it's part of a historical context.
Interesting.
So it's a good part of this project is educating the public like, hey, history is being made every day. And that old Lee Craft boat from the 50s, guess what? Now it's considered a historic site, and it's part of our culture and part of our history. And it's important to document that to have available for future generations.
So how do you know where to look and what to look for?
So there's a very good team that I'm working with. We've got Kyle Stetler and Ed Gillenwater. They're amazing historians. They've done a significant amount of research on the history of Big Fork and the Flathead as a whole. So you'll look for articles. They'll reference a shipwreck here and there, trains getting derailed in the Flathead. So it's amazing that there is a lot of history that's already out there, but not pinning it down to a particular site. Just talking with the public, we have a very amazing community who are, they've been in the valley for generations. So they'll tell us stories of, their father or their grandfather who was on one of these boats as they sank, or have a personal story or a family history associated with this history. These wrecks, these boats, these trains. A lot of logging history and talking with folks or actually interviewing people who have personal experience it's a very cool piece of our history that we can still create. And oftentimes they'll drop some pretty interesting nuggets as to where these wrecks lay today.
Nice. So what kind of technology, what kind of equipment are you using to explore these sites?
Ooh, right on. So this is where I'm most excited about this stuff. So the first tool that we're using, as far as hard equipment, is the side scan sonar. A local community member donated this amazing industrial grade side scan imaging sonar system that's towed behind the boat. It looks like a big torpedo, and that can send out echolocation waves, right? Echo sounding through the water, and it'll return a beautiful image of what's on the bottom. And the amount of detail that this piece of equipment can produce is fascinating. So with a boat, we're towing transect lines. We have a preset map of where we want to follow, and we're towing the towfish behind us, and that's returning what images or what's on the bottom. So that's our first line of investigation is, deploying that towfish, marking targets with a GPS. Once we have a cool set of targets that we want to go actually dive on, we'll take the boat to where those waypoints are, deploy ROV. So ROV is a remote operated vehicle. It's essentially an underwater drone. It's equipped with cameras and thrusters so it can navigate around. Manipulator arms. One of my ROVs has a cool little gripper, so if we do see anything, you drop your car keys or whatever, we can recover it really easily. And the ROV is our first line to go and investigate these sites. So to verify, is that a boat or is that just a really cool, conveniently stack of logs sitting at the bottom, right? So we'll kick the ROV over. We'll pinpoint where the site is with the GPS that's established on the ROV. And depending on the depth, if it's within diveable limits, we'll send divers over, and that's where we'll collect a detailed photo scan or a three-dimensional rendering or a copy of this wreck. And if it is too deep, I have another ROV which is specific for high-resolution imaging, and then that can be deployed to collect the photogrammetry rendering if it's deeper than 100 feet or so.
So what do you do with all of this information?
So it is being cataloged into a database. So the BACC, the Big Fork History Project, they're the ones who are going to be putting together the database and putting together an educational resource to share with other museums and other historic organizations around the state. So my job is to collect the information so that we'll have it on record. And then the Big Fork History Project and the BACC will make that available to different organizations.
So what sites have you found so far?
So since 2016, when I was involved with another archaeological dive program, we located 2 sites based off of that project. And last year we did a really detailed, comprehensive survey of the O'Brien lumber mill or the Summers tie mill plant. A lot of material, a lot of structure was submerged when Kerr Dam was put in. And also a lot of structure was either bulldozed into the lake after, fire events or, other events. They just bulldoze up. Well, here's a bunch of material. Here's the remnants of the original lumber mill. They just bulldozed it in as riprap, or essentially like water break. And then when Kerr Dam was put in, it flooded that all up, so it's all underwater to this day. So we've got the lumber mill site. We're focusing on a few other sites this year. We're going to be looking at Damarsville, the old township of Damarsville. Before Kalispell sits where it is today, the town of Damarsville was right, probably about 6 or 8 miles south of here along the Flathead River. And, it was built right along the river. So we've got landing sites, ferry landing sites, docks, all associated with that original township that are just disarray. They were just left abandoned once Kalispell moved to its present location. So that's a site that we're excited to dive on. We know where it is. We just don't know what's underneath the water. Same thing with Painted Rocks. That's another site that we're really excited to document. Everything above the water has been really well, surveyed. Archaeologists and surveyors have mapped everything above the water quite well, but there could be a wealth of cultural information that's underneath the water that hasn't yet been documented. So I would say for this year, we're targeting sites where there's a strong historical evidence that something's there. And we're just deploying our equipment to verify what is there and make that available. We're diving on Woods Bay. We did a scan on Woods Bay last weekend. The sonar revealed some pretty interesting structures at the bottom of the lake. One sonar image returned. It was very evident that it was a boat, but it's hard to determine exactly how old it is or from what era. So our next step is to deploy the ROV on it to verify what kind of boat it is, how old it is.
So are there any sites that you know of or that you've heard rumors of that you're excited about getting to as this project moves forward?
Ooh, absolutely. Well, what's really amazing about this project is there's so much community involvement and so much community interest. So now that we're picking up steam and folks are aware of what we're doing, I'm getting contacted by folks as far as Bozeman, another fella up in Canada. There's a lot of interest in advancing this project, and people are sharing their personal stories and sharing kind of like family rumors. Hey, there's a gold dredge up here next to X Creek, out in Woods Bay. That's one of the reasons that we were targeting there was a local resident of Woods Bay was telling us about a boat that their family was on. Their parents were on this boat. So they have a lot of cultural or just like personal connection to these wrecks in our waterways. And they're like, yeah, let's find them. Let's check these out. Glacier National Park has some pretty interesting sites that we're excited to dive into. Obviously, working with the park is a little extra red tape that we're navigating. But one of the amazing things about this project is that there is so much out there and there is so much to uncover. And it seems like every day, Ed Gillenwater and Kyle Stetler, as they're doing their research, are coming up with some cool stories for us to pursue. But that's just part of what we're doing is following these threads, following these mysteries, and seeing where they end up.
So what projects do you have coming up this summer that you're excited about?
Let's see. We've got our current archaeological project, finishing our survey sites on Flathead Lake. Or at least through this year, we have about 6 sites that we're focusing on, just here in the Flathead drainage. Woods Bay is pretty cool. We've got that boat on the sonar where I'm pretty excited to check out. Painted Rocks. Painted Rocks, again, is going to be really interesting to document what's down there. I think the DeMarsville site is going to be fascinating just because, again, there hasn't been a very good survey done. And I have dove around those old pilings, and there is some neat stuff under there that I'm just really excited to document and share and, kind of bring to the surface, so to speak. Pun totally intended. Let's see. I would say one of the things that I'm most excited about this project is having an opportunity to complete it or having an opportunity to bring it to light. We're interviewing a lot of folks, getting a lot of really amazing stories out of the public. We're following a lot of really amazing leads. Let's see, without getting into too much detail, because again, we haven't conducted these surveys yet. It makes it a little bit tricky to comment on a forum like this because somebody can beat us to it and alter the site before we have a chance to document on it. So pardon the public, everybody. We just got to keep the little DL. It's treasure that we're talking about here, right?
Historical treasure.
Historical treasure. Hey, isn't history our treasure that we have, right?
Absolutely. How much does a project like this cost?
So all the equipment is quite specialized, so it is pretty expensive. I do own the ROVs. I do own my own scuba gear and my own underwater camera equipment. So those are covered, but there is a lot of cost associated with maintaining them. Last fall I had a pretty scary flood event with one of my ROVs. One of the seals started leaking. So as I'm dropping down to about 200 feet, all of a sudden I start getting these alerts on my Surface computer. Uh-oh, like we got a flood, SOS, SOS. I'm like, oh man. So
when a waterproof object suddenly becomes not waterproof.
There you go, right? In 50 years' time, it'll be a historical relic. So
you can dive on it again.
You can dive on it again. There you go. It's called planting evidence. No. And anyway, that was about $2,000 to get everything replaced and repaired and operational for this upcoming season. So yeah, like what we're doing, it's not cheap. We have an incredible amount of volunteer support, so that's helping, keep costs manageable. Typically I like to run a crew of about 4 on a boat, one captain, me operating the sonar or the ROV, somebody documenting and sharing or documenting all the information that we collect. And then a 4th member to assist, when and where is available. Right. So those are a lot of people to be involved with the project. Really grateful for them. The members that have volunteered to contribute their time has been amazing. This year we raised about $26,000, and that's enough to effectively conduct an initial survey on these sites, right? More funding is going to enable us to do more detailed surveys, get more images, collect a larger photographic rendering of each site that we are documenting. So this year, to cover about 5 sites, we have a $26,000 budget.
Okay.
So by no means is that enough, but it's enough to get us started. Yeah, so we're always looking for support from the community. This is an amazing project, and there's a lot of community interest. So we are continually looking for support. If you have the opportunity or the interest to offer any financial support, please reach out to the BACC office. They are managing the finances for this particular project. If anyone out there is interested in supporting, please check out the Big Fork Arts and Cultural Center. You can find them at baccbigfork.org. And anything that you guys can contribute is really appreciated and help moving this project forward.
All right, everyone. I think that's going to be it for our first episode here, but hopefully we'll have a lot more of these coming up over the next few weeks, months, and years as we learn more about the mysteries that are underneath the Flathead and beyond. See you next time.
Thank you.